that Zoom project was basically a really fun design exercise, really, that I did with my friend Sharon. And it was because, it's a lot for a lot of us, it's our first time sort of working remotely or taking classes remotely. So in a very short amount of time, we had to use Zoom almost on a day-to-day basis. And it was just one of the things that we were noticing, which was the meetings sort of we noticed that meetings were going over time a bit more often than before, mainly because there's no physical constraints to sort of let you know that meeting is running over time. For example, if you're in a company and you booked a conference room, if your meeting's over time, then next batch of people are waiting out the door, and they would sort of tell you that you're going over time. Same with classroom setting. There's lectures, always lectures after lectures in a classroom. So there are those physical constraints that sort of work as a timekeeper. But we didn't have that in a virtual world of Zoom. So meetings tend to go over time a bit more. So we, friend and I decided, why not try and tackle this problem with a new feature. So I would love to share this project with your audience. We're calling it the Zoom Agenda. It's a convenient way to sort of add an agenda to existing Zoom system so that everyone, all the participants in the meeting can see uh, sort of the entire agenda and also around where they should be jumping onto the next topic. So yeah, let's take a look at how this works more closely. On the top, there is the agenda bar, which is dynamically changing based on whatever agenda the meeting organizer inputs. So the first step is, Zoom has an ability to let you create meeting and send calendar invites. And once you do that, it gets populated into the meetings tab on Zoom software. So we thought, okay, so a natural flow would be an organizer creates a meeting on Zoom and invites everyone, selects a time, and notifies everyone. Then the organizer has plenty of time until the actual meeting time to come up with an agenda to see, well, what are some of the things that we want to discuss in the meeting. So we thought that this meetings tab would be a very natural extension to the whole planning process. So it's very easy to create an agenda. You click add agenda button, which creates this whole timetable view, and you're able to enter the agenda name. Note that the time is already pre-selected based on the meeting time. So if you happen to change the meeting duration, then this will automatically get updated as well. Now, most likely you have multiple items on your agenda. We made it very easy to do that as well. You just do so by clicking on Add to Agenda button. That would create new slots so that you can enter more agenda items on top of your previous ones. And note that the time gets recalculated based on how many agendas you have. By default, they're added so that they're divided into most equal number of minutes as possible to start with. But you can also adjust that very easily by dragging the handle. One of the things that I really think is important when I'm doing these kind of UX projects is making sure that prototype is included in the writing. So the reason why prototype is really important is because I could show this kind of feature in a static wireframe, but if I do that, the small details can get lost and people might not understand how it actually works. But by adding a interactive prototype like this, really helps people understand, this is how you can adjust the time. This prototype was made using a software called ProtoPie. It was my first time using it, but it was actually really mind-blowing, actually. ProtoPie, unlike other prototyping softwares, let you store variables and use real data for prototyping. So this was why I was able to sort of animate the real-time numeric changes which is very hard to do in previous softwares like Principle
Right.
or Vision. Yeah, after you add the agenda, during the actual meeting time, the agenda bar sort of has a time ticker that ticks along with the time and lets you know which topic you should be on at the current given moment. And of course, a lot of people still tend to go over time. So we really thought hard about how do we let the participants know that the time is up. We didn't want to be too invasive. We initially had a version where there was like a red glowing bar to really make it clear that you're going over time. But from time to time, it might be important to go over time. Maybe they're discussing something really important in the last few minutes. So we didn't want to be too invasive. So we decided to go with a very gentle blue light up of the bars, which is similar to the previous visual design language. So while it's not intrusive, there's a message that says agenda is completed so that the organizer and participants know that it's completed so that they can finish off what they were discussing. And yeah, the design project itself took around 1 week to complete, but it was like a very rapid one where we went from very quick ideation to very quick idea validation with our friends, and it was a very fun experience.
Nice. Can you share us the design file and give us a walkthrough of that?
Yeah. So this is the original Figma file that we used for prototyping. As you can see, there are a lot of artboards.
Right.
The reason why there are a lot of artboards is because we did a lot of iterations. You can see iteration 1, 2, 3, etc. So something that I think is very important is even if it's a very quick project, I still think following double diamond structure is very important. So diverging enough to see a lot of different options, to explore as many options as possible, and then eventually converging to a single solution. I still think double diamond structure is very important, diverging as much as possible to explore a lot of options and eventually converging into a single solution in the end. So this is precisely what we did there. Even if it was a short term project, we made sure that we explored a lot of different options. So for example, I can show you how we explore different ways to create the agenda timetable. So there was a first version where when you click on Add Agenda, it creates a timeline, but it fills horizontally. So this was the first version that I came up with, and it made a lot of sense for me at at that time because time when we think of a timeline, it flows in a horizontal direction. So this was the first version that I explored, and it seemed like it's pretty intuitive and it's working. I see what's happening. I can see that I can resize it using the handle to see it pretty clear. But then when we did a very quick user testing with our friend, it quickly showed that uh, it the this system breaks too easily. When you go over 3 slots, the text becomes truncated, the space becomes narrow, so it's very hard to see, or hard to see this working for say 6 different agenda items.
Right.
So we quickly noticed that there must be some way better to do this. And I noticed that there's a lot of white space when we go for the horizontal option. So that's why for the other iterations, we tried going vertically, and that made much more sense to us. So that's how we ended up with the actual version that we have. And even for the vertical version, we were trying a lot of different visual languages. For example, this is one of the earlier version of the visuals that we tried using bare minimum colors, minimum lines, gray, keeping it clean. But eventually, you know, even having different visual explorations make a lot of difference because each of these things, whether it's a field or a button or like a drop down, makes a lot of difference. For example, this version where all the time indicators were underlined, it felt like we were making the user input the duration of each item. That sort of is counterintuitive to what we were originally envisioning, which was it would automatically calculate the time for us. So we decided to not go ahead with this idea, but instead, after a few iterations, we landed on our final version of the vertical timetable. And yeah, same goes for the actual meeting screen as well. We took a lot of care into taking screenshots of actual Zoom calls because we wanted to show and demonstrate that it works with the existing software. So, we asked a lot of people for permissions to use their, video footage to be used in the prototype. But to begin with, we used our own video call to take a screenshot of it. You can see my little shark doll here, and then to quickly prototype what the feature might look like. So yeah, that was a pretty fun and quick double diamond project that we did.
That's great. Like that's really great. Like it's a great project, and yeah, to pull it off in a week's time while collaborating remotely, it's a big feat. So kudos to that.
Yeah, I had a really fun time doing it.